So I want to start by just reviewing our goal. We wanted students in your class to collaborate for 10 minutes during a 55-minute lesson. Yesterday, you were able to implement a Nearpod that we talked about the other day in order to reach that goal as a strategy. So these collaborative learning strategy checklists and this Nearpod checklist you use. So I want to go over how'd you collect data and what was the data you found. And we'll start with student data first. So how many minutes of collaboration did occur for students? And say whatever you think you need to say.
During that 55-minute period, I think we ended up with 7 to 8 minutes of collaboration broken up to 2 or 3 different times. But what the students would do with the Nearpod is they would get information, do something with the information, whether they were taking fill-in notes, whatever, closed notes, and then they would respond on the next activity with what they just learned. So they were having to apply right then what they learned. And I'd allow them to pair up with a person next to them or either across from them to discuss their answers. And I asked them both to reply so I could make sure everybody was actively involved, but they could share comments to each other.
Okay. So 7 to 8 minutes, and you told us how collaboration occurred. Now I want to go over the checklist.
Okay.
And explain to me, did you do this during the lesson or after the lesson, just retroactively? And because I see you met all our requirements for this.
I did it, with some of this I looked at before to see what what I needed to do. And I checked off some of the things prior to because I knew about my environment, what I'm trying to say. And then, of course, right after the children left, we had a planning time. So I finished filling out the checklist at that point and made sure, I had several Post-its around the room that I could just write on, depending on where I landed.
Okay, so you saw beforehand, you have a psychologically safe environment that you've established.
Right.
You've set those clear expectations, and you talked to them about it during the lesson. Yes. And then you talked about social skills. You talk about how they should interact positively every day. You've told me this. You've considered your makeup when they're at their tables, so they were working with the appropriate people. You provided students did students finish early, by the way, with this?
No, it was
Okay.
an own-level group, and they pretty well stayed with each other.
So we didn't have to worry about the extension
No.
activity, but if needed, you had something
Sure.
ready. Okay, so you talked about your Nearpod. You talked about you had slides with information. You had activity slides, and
Yes.
after no more than 4 information slides, you had those, correct?
Right.
1 piece of technology for every 2 students.
And I ended up getting enough technology for one
Okay.
per child.
And you mentioned that you allowed students to collaboratively
Right.
answer the questions. So you met all these checks and you had that extension activity ready to go.
Right.
Okay. So I want to kind of talk about where we're at now.
Okay.
What is on your mind?
After doing this and consciously aware that I'm giving them time to collaborate, getting them back to where I wanted them to be for me as a teacher, took me more time than I realized. I know I allow collaboration in my classroom even without the checklist and being consciously aware of it. I might talk to your partner, but I guess I was more worried about how much time I was giving them, and instead of just worried about where my class needed to be.
Okay.
I was consciously thinking, okay, I got to get to 10 minutes. I need to get to 8 minutes, whatever. And I should have let that go, and been just, 4 minutes was too long for the level of child I had, the maturity level I have, the academic ability of the children.
That 1 4-minute block.
That one 4-minute block was entirely too long. I should have cut that in half and seen where they were, and maybe set a timer.
Okay.
I should have set a timer for them so they could have physically seen the time. I've done that in the past after teaching for so many years. Sometimes when children can see time ticking away, they're more productive. Some of it makes them very anxious. So that's why I've eliminated it from my classroom, but I probably should have brought it back in for this.
I like that.
Just so they could see that time was ticking.
That might be something we could add to your checklist that I
I think we
really
should.
like. So I wrote that down right here,
Okay.
and we can go back and add that into your checklist
Okay.
and just kind of modify that a bit because I really like that in that We need to figure out a time that's appropriate for your students.
Right.
I can pick that up later. A time that's appropriate for your students. And then we just have that timer for them to visually see it.
Right, and I usually take my first academic class, because it's an own level class, and then I make accommodations for my accelerated and my super low,
Nice.
or low. But I like to, that's why I went on and did this checklist on an own level class.
Okay.
That was my good medium class.
Okay. I like that we can add that. Okay, I'm going
Okay.
to move on to something
All right.
else. What do you think went well, or what are some roadblocks you think you ran into?
My roadblock was having too much time for
Okay.
collaboration. That was my fault, because I thought I had to have more time. I should have just went with my instinct and just did it and wrote down that we did it for 2 minutes, or, whatever. That was comfortable for all of us, because I was trying to allow them more time consciously, and I shouldn't have, because it allowed for off-task behavior,
Okay.
and which had me call them back in.
You were thinking too much about the goal, not
Exactly,
as much
about what
the
my
lesson.
audience
Okay.
and my subject area. But the children were totally on task with the Nearpod and the paper they had to fill out.
Okay. Yeah.
And it didn't seem like work to them. That's why they enjoy Nearpod. They don't realize that they're actually taking notes.
Okay. Now, one adaptation we've already mentioned that I think is amazing is setting a timer for collaboration
Visual,
that we'll add into
yes.
the checklist. I think that's awesome. So I'm trying to see here. Are there any other changes we want to make to this checklist, or any to the collaborative learning checklist, or any other adaptations we want to make beyond setting a timer for collaboration that you feel like would be effective in this checklist only right now? Or in general, are there any other adaptations you want
As
to
I
make?
thought about it, because after doing the lesson, how I could improve, because that's my goal, is just to improve that particular lesson for that day, each lesson. Only thing I could think of was a visual or some
Okay.
type of timer. I couldn't think of anything else unless I rearranged my whole classroom with students, give them new seating or whatever, and I'm not big into that. I'm big into, you can have your own seat wherever, as long as you are productive and respectful there, you can keep that seat.
Okay.
And then I will assign you one if that doesn't happen. So I can't say that assigned seats or scrambling them, all those things that other teachers may do. There still will be the same amount of children in the
Okay.
same room.
One thing that I think would help, you mentioned you were concentrating too much on measuring
I saw
the
it,
10
yeah.
minutes. We need to think of a different way to measure this.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you set multiple timers for whatever, 2 minutes or whatever
Right.
was appropriate for your students,
That
and you
level,
let it run, you could see how many timers you let go off. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we could put that in the checklist as well, just to make it easier for you to measure the goal.
Right.
So we could say multiple. So I'll say set multiple timers,
Okay.
and you can determine what's appropriate for your students
And the activity.
in the activity, but you can just say save it as whatever you want it to, so that you know, hey, that was a minute and a half, that was 1
Right.
minute, that was 2 minutes, and you can just add it up at the end of a lesson instead of you having to, like you said, concentrate so much on
And
that
watch the clock.
that you lose track of what the students are doing and their actual engagement in the lesson.
Which I don't want to lose focus on.
Yeah, so I think those two adaptations to this checklist are actually will make it a lot more efficient.
I agree.
Yeah. Now, do you want to keep the goal as it is?
I think it should be less.
You think it should be less?
That goal should be set by the level of child you have and the group that you have.
Okay.
It shouldn't be a generic 10 minutes, in my opinion. Like that particular group, if I give them more than 6 minutes of collab time, I'm having to reel them back off the roof.
Okay.
Okay? Now, and with my lower level children, the collab time included me. More self-direct. I mean, I was directing them.
Like whole group.
Whole group.
Okay.
No, not self-directing. But with my advanced, they did the self-directing and they could handle it. I'm like, okay, I can hit my bell and we're ready to move on.
Okay, so
Maturity of a child.
we could base it off of class levels. So what would you want it to be for this
On level, no more than 6.
Okay, so
For me.
we're gonna make the goal now 6 minutes of collab time, and I'll type this up and send it to you later. What about advanced students? What do you think the goal should
No
be
more
for
than
them?
8.
Okay, so
I can't handle more than 8.
okay, and maybe if you get those timers working, that'll make it
Maybe.
really efficient.
Yeah.
Just with 8 minutes, and we'll see how
Right.
it goes. Yeah. So
Yes.
let's work on hitting a goal before.
Okay.
And we need to modify it to make sure we do hit.
And my
goals.
other 2 that are lower than this will have to go 4 to 5.
Okay, so I'm just gonna, so 4 to 5
Mm-hmm.
minutes of collab time. All right, and I really think adding those multiple timers will help you keep the time. That way,
Thank you.
you keep them engaged and you stay within the lesson and not get lost in
In the time.
collecting data. Yeah, because that's not the important thing is the lesson and what the students are doing.
Right. I lost focus of that. So I'm gonna be honest with you, I was glad I didn't have to do this all day long.
No,
I
yeah.
talk the
Yeah,
rest of the
no,
time.
you're fine. So
Thank you.
I will send you these updated goals.
Okay.
These times we have based off student ability levels because you know your students best.
Right.
Okay.
And
So
that could change next year.
yeah. So I mean, so as of right now, you feel like this is best for your student ability levels. That's totally fine, and for what you're comfortable with.
Yes, and with 8 minutes being the total ceiling that I would allow
Okay.
in advance, okay.
That's fine. And then I will also add into our collaborative learning checklist, set multiple timers for collaboration time of different timings so that you can just set it, have it on the board, and then at the end of a class, you can just go back and look at how many you set.
Okay.
And that would keep the time for you.
Right.
So I feel like that's a really efficient way of collecting the data and
Okay.
measuring our goal. Now, what I want to talk about is where could we go from here to help you consistently meet these goals? Do you feel like you need to go see other teachers do this again? Or I'm going to throw a few things out there. No, okay. So we can modify.
I'm going to because they're asking us to in the school, so I will.
So you will end up doing it. So
3
since
times,
you
she
have,
said.
since you have to do it, let's try. So I'm going to write this down
Bear
to.
walks or whatever they're called.
Yeah. So observe a Nearpod,
Yep.
a collaborative Nearpod, and we'll say we'll get this done by December 5th.
Okay.
Okay. So since we have time to do those, so we'll say we'll get that done by December 5th.
Okay.
Since we reworked your goal, how about we collect data on another lesson?
Okay.
And we can say we'll do that within the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
So next Friday is, let me just look that up. The
Should be on the 15th.
15th. Okay, so we'll say we'll have that done by November 15th. And that's to meet the goals of 6 minutes, 8 minutes, or 4 to 5, depending on
Yeah.
the class. Okay? I am going to, this is for me here, create an edit checklist with your new additions to it, which I think are awesome.
Thank you.
And I'll get that done no later than tomorrow,
Okay.
I'll say. So I'm going to say November 6th, we'll have that done. Now, we have this, and this is when this is going to happen. When would you like to meet again? When should we meet
Anytime
again?
after the 5th would be fine with me. Is that
Okay.
okay with you?
So anytime after.
I would like to get the things done before we meet
Okay,
again.
I love that actually. So let's say we meet
It could be
December
soon.
6th would be a Friday, and
Perfect.
everything would be done.
Perfect.
So we will meet again by December.
You're looking at November. Where's December?
Right there.
Oh, sorry.
So yeah, by
Okay.
December 6th we can meet again.
Perfect.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
No, thank you.